Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast, Episode 1. Tonight, we are kicking off our podcast with a special guest, my friend and former coworker, and currently the Vice President of Marketing and Communication at Indiana Tech, Brian Engelhart. Brian, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the first guest, and hopefully I don't do such a poor job that I'm the last guest.
Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see how the next hour goes. Well, thanks for being on. We're going to get to the 3 questions that we ask our guests. We like to hear about people's career path. We like to hear a little bit about their organizations and then the work that they're doing today. But you recently returned from a campus that was not Indiana Tech. You recently took your daughter to William and Mary, which is also your alma mater. So was it nice to be on a campus that you could just sort of relax and be a parent, or what was that experience like?
It was nice to be that, to have being the one asking the questions, not the one having the questions asked of. It was, but it was very much of a piece with what we've experienced at Indiana Tech. I think they, like us and many college campuses, are just being very cautious about how they bring students back. So our daughter Grace is starting her sophomore year in college and decided to transfer to my alma mater. So I'm very proud of her, as is her mom. But it was, at first it was a little quiet for a move-in kind of day. They're only moving in freshmen and transfers there to start the first 2 weeks of the semester. And so she was one of the first to move in, and she and her roommate were virtually the only ones on their hall the first night. But it started to pick up and get more activity as the days were on while we were there. So over the 3 days we were there, she was able to meet some more of the women who are going to be living with her in her dorm and just start to make her way around campus some more. So it started to get more of that feel. But I think they're doing a good job there in making sure that, again, everybody's safe. They're starting online, and then after Labor Day, they'll go in person and bring some more of the students on the campus. And so far, their approach seems to be working very well. They've been sending out updates to parents and students every day about anything that's been reported, or even just locally in the city of Williamsburg and on the peninsula in Virginia there, about the COVID situation, and they all seem to be managing that very well in that part of Virginia. So we have confidence she'll be okay. We hope that everything continues to go smoothly and she'll be able to have as normal an experience as possible.
Oh, great. And she chose William and Mary because of such esteemed alumni as Thomas Jefferson and you.
Well, maybe not me. One of my classmates was Patton Oswalt. She's way more impressed with Patton Oswalt than with me.
Well, as she should be.
She should be, as I am. And she was really mad when she found out that he was a classmate of mine after having seen the movie Ratatouille, not before, when she was a little girl. So yes, far more distinguished alumni than I am, but she's excited to start there for sure.
So what was it like for you being in higher ed marketing, watching your daughter select the college, knowing that she's made a couple different decisions, if you can elaborate on that. What's it like looking at that from a parent's perspective that's helped you in your work, if anything? Well,
I mean, it just really the way it helped me, and I think all of us on my team and on our admissions team who have also gone through that as parents, it really puts you in very much the first-person view of the things that parents are wondering about, as you would expect. So it's about what kind of experience is my child going to have? What kind of value are they going to get out of this? And particularly this year, what kind of safety measures are in place? But you just experience that on a much more emotional level. And so, you try and keep that in mind as you're continuing to put together communication and be in touch with parents about, just how much they have tied up in this person that they're sending and entrusting you with over these next 4 years. And it just gives you that much more of a heightened respect for, making sure that those students have the best experience they possibly can.
Yeah. So on this podcast, we can do anything we want since it's the first episode. But
okay, what are we doing?
What I'm planning on doing is again, 3 questions. We're going to talk about your career path. How did you end up doing what you're doing today? What is the organization you work for? What does the organization do? What does your work entail?
Right.
And then the last question we'll get to is, what are some of the most exciting, interesting things, challenging things maybe that you're working on right now? But let's start at the beginning with your career path. So you mentioned you went to William and Mary.
I did.
Maybe take us back a little bit. How did you end up at William and Mary? And then how'd you end up in Indiana from William and Mary?
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So this is going to take a while, I suppose.
Yeah. We have all night.
So how did I wind up at William & Mary? So I actually grew up in suburban New York. I grew up on Long Island, and I was the youngest of five. So I was the youngest of five in a Catholic family where my parents realized, oh, we're still having kids. So my dad retired when I was still fairly young. And he retired, and he and my mom and I settled on the Eastern Shore of Virginia.
And he worked in education too,
He
correct?
did, yeah. So he was a math teacher who became a school administrator. He became a school principal. And so he was a principal the whole time I was growing up. And my mom was a teacher also. And so when they retired, he was able to retire fairly young. And we moved to the Eastern Shore of Virginia along the Chesapeake Bay. So I actually went to high school not too far from William & Mary. And I think what a lot of folks don't necessarily realize about it is that it's actually a state school for the state of Virginia. It's an excellent school, but a lot of people think it's a private, but it's a public university.
It's the oldest university in the country, is that correct?
It is the second oldest.
Behind Harvard.
Behind Harvard,
Okay.
yeah. So it was founded in 1693, but it's a state of Virginia institution, so just a great value for a great education. So I was kind of drawn to it for its its nice size. It's sort of mid-size. It's not too small, not too big. For its liberal arts tradition, I've always been drawn more towards history and English, which we'll talk a little bit about, kind of led me to sort of where I am and gave me the skills to do some of the things that I'm doing now. But just sort of, it was about 2 hours away and really just kind of enjoyed that combination of factors. It was away, but not too far, and certainly a really good school and a great setting. So that's kind of what took me there. And then while I was there, I really started to gravitate more towards government and political science, international relations. And so that's what I wound up majoring in. And I was a minor in history and English, so I just always enjoyed writing and got a really additional good instruction and training in that, which has served me well throughout my career. But during that time, I wound up interning on Capitol Hill. They had a really good program, and still do, to foster that in students. And Washington, D.C. is not that far away. So I actually wound up interning for a congressman from Indiana, a gentleman who has since passed away in the intervening years, named Jim Johnce. And he was sort of from west central Indiana. And I interned for him in the early 90s for a summer. And so that started to create some of my Indiana connection, while also continuing my interest in politics and government. And then upon graduating, my first, what I called my first real job out of at a school, was as a deputy campaign manager on a congressional campaign in Virginia. It was for a gentleman named Andy Fox, who has since returned to being a newscaster in the Virginia Beach area. And so Andy was running for Congress in what was my home district, and that could not have been a better experience for a young person from so many perspectives. One is it kind of gave me a lot of responsibility at a pretty young age, and kind of throws you in the deep end and says, can you swim and help us out? Everybody's got to be working all the time. But it really kind of taught me a lot about many different kinds of people. I met people every day from every kind of background you could imagine. And it really taught me a little bit about, things that they deal with in their lives, things that they have encountered, in their careers and in their home life, and just the whole spectrum of everything that people, deal with, that politics tries to at least help with, and leaders really try to address in our country. So that helped quite a bit.
And a lot of scrutiny from media and a lot of different, constituencies to please and to speak to, which probably is a lot like the work you do today.
It is. I think I was fortunate, I guess is the right word, that it was much less intense an environment, particularly being young. I mean, there was, social media wasn't a thing yet. The internet was just sort of dawning at that point. So it was still a very traditional media environment. But still, it does bring a lot of scrutiny, and but also a lot of interest as well. And but I think it also taught me, I had the opportunity to, really kind of start developing skills in writing, for everything from news releases to speeches to, making the case for the candidate. And, so it was also just happened to be just great fun. It was, 22 and, didn't have anything, other responsibilities as far as family or anything like that. And
those were the days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. But no, it was a great way to start the career for sure.
Yeah. So you're working in your home district.
Yep.
Working for Andy Fox, and take us to how you ended up in Indiana.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I had interned for an Indiana member of Congress, Jim Johns. And so after the campaign, unfortunately, we were not successful. We did not win our race. But through some connections on the campaign, I was able to get a job at a PR firm in Washington as a staff writer. And a gentleman that I worked with on the campaign had joined the firm that I ultimately wound up joining. They were looking for more help. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. not too long after the conclusion of the campaign. And just sort of started my career there in communication. And we had a variety of clients. It was corporate clients, government, political candidates, et cetera. But also during that time, I had really kept in close touch with a lot of the people I had interned with, people from Congressman Johnson's office, and that sort of became my immediate friend group when I first moved to D.C. It's good to have a network like that and just people to hang out with when you're in a new city. And one of the women who I had kept in touch with had taken a job with the Congresswoman at the time from Fort Wayne, Jill Long, as in her Washington office, and so she moved back to D.C. And then, funny enough, I actually interviewed for a job with Jill Long at one point, as did the person who ultimately became my wife, who got the job instead of me. So she's never let me forget that.
Well, and probably still would, if we're being honest.
If we're being honest, she would get most jobs over me if she were competing with me on those things.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I kept in touch with our friend and then interviewed for that job. Didn't get it. My wife relocated from here to Washington, and then through that same friend, just out one night, just introduced us, and things kind of went from there. So my wife was from Fort Wayne, and so we got married in D.C., spent the first part of our marriage there, and then as we started a family, we're looking to maybe be closer to extended family. My family was not from the D.C. area. They were probably 4 or 5 hours away. Fort Wayne's a little further, but both of us had good opportunities.
So you want to be close to one of the families?
Yeah, we just kind of want to be closer to the grandparents and just find a place where it's a little bit more family friendly to raise kids as we did start our family.
So when did you move to Indiana? What year?
We moved in 2003.
2003. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about, where did you land job-wise? And I think it's a place very near to where we're recording this episode.
It's the place we're sitting in right now.
That's right.
I landed about 10 feet away in the office over there.
Yeah.
So my first job here in Fort Wayne was at Asher Agency, and I was a senior account supervisor and director of public relations at that time. So I was here for about 6 years, and that was a good transition to a couple of things. One, it was I'd always been in more the PR area of communication. This, particularly at the time, was much more of a traditional advertising agency. So it kind of started filling in the picture for me of, the entire industry of PR, advertising, marketing, communication. So it was a bit more of that next piece of the puzzle. So that was what intrigued me about it. It was also a really, really good introduction to Fort Wayne in Northeast Indiana. Then as now, the agency has a wide range of clients, both public and private sector clients. So it really gives you a good sense of, things that are happening here. The staff is really well connected to a lot of the things that were going on. So it was really a good way for me to get to know the city. And even the state. We have a lot of clients at that time, and I believe as you do now, down in the Indianapolis area that I would travel back and forth for. And so I don't know that I could have asked for a better way to start a career here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah. Well, great. So then you moved on to Britain.
I did.
Britain, which is a really great creative shop here in Fort Wayne. Tell us about the work you did there and what your experience was like at Britain.
Also great. I think I've been fortunate throughout my career. Every stop I've had the good fortune to work for good people. And I've tried to model that as I've kind of gone on and built teams of my own. So, I think moving to Britain, it was much more of, I would say, more of a business to consumer kind of environment. And you're right, it was probably founded much more out of a creative services kind of expertise, whereas I always felt that Asher was founded a little bit more out of the account service and strategy and development that way. So it's just two sides of the same coin. right? And at the time, I think they were looking to grow their account base. And so I joined on as Director of Client Services. They were still fairly new at that point, probably 3, 4, 5 years old. This would have been about 2009 or so. And so I joined on as they did a lot of work with Vera Bradley and continue to. But I think they were really looking to build the non-Vera Bradley side of the business, just to attract more clients, in that industry and utilize that, really excellent track record they had in helping drive results for Vera. And so it was really a good time to join the firm, and really experienced some really good times there with that team, and learned a lot, both from Jeff and Sue Britton about not just the clients we were serving, but just how to go about building a business, how to treat people, and how to get the best out of them and position them for success. So I owe a lot to them and my experience there too. So, but I would say that was, if Asher was a little bit more advertising, marketing, I would say, Britton was a little bit more marketing communication, probably a little less traditional. That was also during the time where social media, was becoming more prominent. So it gave me an opportunity to work in that realm a little more. Digital had become much more of a mature tool in terms of, e-commerce and those kind of things. So it really enabled me to add some of that experience to my resume as well.
And well, that's the thing that's fascinating to me about listening to career paths, because you see how things start to stack up.
Right.
You start out working in politics, and you're learning public advocacy and PR.
Sure.
Then you stack on top of that some advertising. Then you stack on top of that,
Right.
the creative stuff. So you've got now this continuum of skills. And then who comes knocking on your door for your next job?
Indiana Tech.
Yeah.
So I met Dr. Snyder. Art Snyder was the president of Indiana Tech at the time, probably in early 2013. And, that was at a time in my career I was starting to wonder, what is next? Would I be interested at some point in starting or running my own firm? Or, are there areas of interest that I really haven't touched on at that point? And, it's interesting that, the way you talk about a career path, I would say I've generally been a little winding, but at the same time, all in the general direction of communication and trying to fill in some of those blanks. And beyond that, if I find it interesting, that's really what matters to me. And if I can just continue to learn, that's what matters to me.
Yeah, and I think what sometimes when I talk with college students or younger people, a lot of this isn't planned.
Right.
It's kind of like you stumble upon opportunities,
You do.
and some of it is great, some of it is less great. But even those less great experiences, you say, all right, now I know what I don't want to do.
For sure.
Yeah. So so you meet Dr. Snyder. You started Indiana Tech.
Yep.
Let's do this. Let's talk about Indiana Tech and talk about the university as if someone didn't know much about Indiana Tech. How do you describe Indiana Tech? What's it all about? What are some of the facets of the university people might not be all that aware of?
Well, one I think given the name, people maybe not on a casual level be as aware of is that we are a university. We're not just focused on engineering or technology. That is certainly our heritage and an area of excellence for us. So we actually have 3 colleges that fall under the university: College of Engineering, College of Arts and Sciences, and the College of Business. So that's one thing. I think there's a much greater diversity of programs and degree programs, everything from certificates to associate degrees, bachelor's, master's, PhD programs that people can take advantage of there. So I think that's one thing that people are maybe not immediately aware of until they start looking at us a little bit more in earnest. Second is, I think, the number of students that we serve. We actually have in the area of about 7,000 to 8,000 students with us, and we have our traditional campus here in Fort Wayne that this region's probably the most familiar with. So it's just east of downtown. We've been there since the mid-50s. And, so we have about 1,500 traditional undergraduates come and live with us and learn with us each year on that campus. So that's the student who comes out of high school looking for a 4-year experience, go away to college, maybe play a sport, that kind of thing. So much larger in our universe, as it is for education in general in this country now, is more that non-traditional audience, which is starting to become a bit of a misnomer, right? It's, the traditional is actually, the non-traditional is actually the larger number of learners in a college environment now. So that's the maybe mid-career professional looking to finish a degree. Maybe they started their bachelor's but didn't finish. Maybe they're looking to get a master's degree. Maybe they're looking to switch careers and need a different degree to get started in something. And so we have on the order of about 6,500 students in that program now. And that's not just here in Fort Wayne. That's online. It's also at regional campuses that we have down in Indianapolis and over in Lafayette to northwestern Indiana, down into northern Kentucky, on down to Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is our newest location. So we actually serve students really at almost every stage of their lives. We've got, the 18-year-old leaving home for the first time on up to, people in their 50s and 60s looking to, either advance or continue a career or just, check off a really good, life goal of getting, a master's degree or even pursuing a PhD and going into teaching and those kind of things. So I think that can be surprising to people who don't know much about us. But I think at our core, we really remain what we were at our founding. We're really very focused on helping people achieve careers that are going to be relevant today and into the 21st century, but also living lives of significance and worth. And so, our programs are very much oriented towards, entering a field of some sort. So you're not going to come to Indiana Tech and be a history major or a government major like I was. But you will come here and graduate ready to be an accountant or a biomedical engineer or a marketing professional, criminal justice. You can go into law enforcement. There's just a really great range of things that we do prepare you for. But within that, we really do want to make sure we're educating the whole person and providing them with the support needed to really think about how do I go about the next steps and start that career path that we were just talking about that can be winding. And for us as an institution, we really want to be there for them throughout that. So we've been looking at how do we continue to serve and keep you updated with your skills and your knowledge because it's not just a credential and then you move on to your career. You got to keep getting educated and you got to keep adding those credentials as you go.
Yeah, and that's what impressed me most about Indiana Tech. I mean, I'll mention that my initial exposure to Indiana Tech was as a student. I did the MBA program, finished back in, I think it was 2003.
Sure.
It's been a long time. I'm getting older, so I forget dates. But 2003, and what I really enjoyed about the experience was how student-focused it was.
Right.
The fact that I was a working adult. I had, at the time, my son was, he would have been 4 years old when I graduated.
Right.
So have a young son, have a somewhat demanding job, and yet I was able to make a master's degree program work and do it in an accelerated fashion. And
Right.
I genuinely believe that's one of the things that Indiana Tech does best because faculty and staff are all very committed to students being successful, and that's
Right.
I think the difference is that I think every higher ed professional, almost without exception, is committed to helping students.
Oh, for sure.
But Indiana Tech does it in a way that really aligns well with a career and some of those other responsibilities, while also serving well the needs of traditional students. So
Yeah.
it's a multifaceted institution, does a lot of things well.
Yeah, and we really have an amazing faculty. I mean, they're not just really proficient at teaching, but many of them are experts in their field who have maybe had a career in doing what they're teaching prior to becoming a teacher full time. So I think that really adds that level of I know where you're coming from and I know the seat you're sitting in because I was there.
Yeah.
And they're really good about making themselves available to students of all ages to say, I can give you that helping hand to not just learn this material, but to get you connected into the industry too. So, and we try and make sure that that is people understand that is an important differentiator for us. That we know that school is probably not the most important thing that you as a working adult have on your plate,
Yeah.
but it's an important thing, and we need to make it as straightforward for you to enter that, to have a hand on your shoulder throughout saying, you can do this and we can help you, and you really start to see the benefit from there.
Yeah, and the campus itself, while a lot of education is happening virtually and remotely these days, the campus itself is phenomenal. It's really a beautiful campus, has grown a ton. I tell people all the time, it's kind of funny that the building that was the new building when I was a student is now one of the older buildings.
That's true.
And that hasn't been recently renovated. It's been updated but not renovated. So a lot of growth, really great facilities, and really transforming a part of Fort Wayne in a different way, and just becoming a real nice community centerpiece.
Yeah, it's a great place to go to work every day. It really is. It's a beautiful setting, and our students love it. We're in close proximity to all the great things that are happening in downtown Fort Wayne, which we're big supporters of, and want to see continue. And so it's a good setting for us, and it really also helps keep our students connected to the community. And we want to make sure that we're helping them, see that there's really great opportunity here in Northeast Indiana, and there's plenty of great career opportunities out here. So why not stay? We'd like to be a talent attractor, and make sure that they see that as a really good option.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about Northeast Indiana is we have really great colleges. Fort Wayne is in an odd way kind of a college town, and a great opportunity to get people into the area and stay. I mean, you and I are both transplants, so we can speak to that. But it's nice to see some people younger than us.
It would nice to just continue seeing that next generation.
Yeah, for sure. Us, sure. Well, let's talk now about so Indiana Tech. You've been there now. How long is it?
7 years.
Okay.
Hard to believe it's been that long, but 7 years. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the projects you're working on right now, and whether it's I don't know what word I would use, but what are some of the most interesting, exciting, challenging? Because the times we're in, I'm sure there's some challenges.
Right.
What are some of the big things you're working on, and how are you navigating some of the challenges we're going through right now?
I think at a high level, what we're navigating right now is also it dovetails with challenges and opportunities in higher ed in general. So in the springtime, COVID-19 arrives on the scene, make the responsible choice that for our traditional program and our in-person classes for our College of Professional Studies, that we're going to go all online for the rest of the semester. So that's sort of early March to up to commencement time period in May, and then beyond even for the CPS sessions that continue on with that. So that really highlights can we be flexible to do that and still provide for those who had been taking in-person classes just as good an educational experience. But it also kind of highlights things that I think higher ed is working on, but also needs to continue to think hard about, which is the flexibility of your delivery modes. Even in the traditional undergraduate environment, more and more you're seeing students come into that environment having had online class experience. And you're starting to see that they're wanting that as an option for at least some of their classes. They want that in-person experience. They want to live on a campus, and we're seeing that in particular now after particularly some of them in the spring might have ended their high school careers online. No fault of the high schools. Some of that didn't go as well as it could have.
Sure.
So they're ready to move back to in person. But at the same time, they are asking those questions which you would expect, which is for every class, do I need to show up every Tuesday at a building in a classroom and be in a classroom to learn this? Certainly, there's things that you definitely want to do that, but it starts to influence. How do you go about teaching and mentoring in an era where we're much more attuned to doing things on demand, right? Accessing course content whenever we want. How do you make the most of that time you would have with a student one-on-one and in person? And so it really kind of accelerated some of that for us to think even further about what does education look like at Indiana Tech in 5 years, in 10 years for our students of every age. And so I think that's the big challenge for higher ed in general, and it's an exciting one. I think for us at Indiana Tech, we're uniquely well positioned to be continuing on that path. We started online coursework at Indiana Tech sort of the mid-late 2000s in our College of Professional Studies program. So it's not new to us, which is I think what allowed us to pivot as quickly as we were able to and as effectively as we were able to, even on the traditional undergraduate in-person side. We weren't rookies at it. There are some folks who have more experience with it than others, but we were able to navigate that really well. But it's also allowed us to think a little further ahead than just how do we make sure that this fall we are able to pivot back to online if we need to. So we've started doing things that I think we're going to continue to build on, like here on the main campus, all classes are being live streamed, so we install the technology in every classroom to do that. So if, for example, you're an international student who hasn't been able to get back to the United States yet, you could take your classes online to start and take part via live stream. And it's a live, environment that you're in. Or if, we hope it doesn't happen, but if you happen to fall ill and you can't come to class for a couple of weeks, you don't have to lose progress. You could still take part in class. We're also recording all the classes that way. So you can go back, even if you're able to attend, go back and review the course material. So we're starting to include more and more kind of features like that in all of our classrooms. And I think on the CPS side, you'll start to see that be influential in terms of, what if you have a class, in whatever topic it is, that's in person in Indianapolis that has 3 people, and you've got 2 people signed up in, say Munster, one person wants to take that in Lafayette. Well, what if you were able to bring them together in a virtual environment, teach it in the classroom, but have people sort of live stream in and take part virtually that way? So I think it can expand what we can offer people in an environment that can be challenging to schedule things effectively for people to take in person. So
yeah, in kind of a strange way, preparing people for the new workforce, right? Because if you have to work with people virtually, I mean, I know today I started my day in the office. I went back home and worked remote for about 6 hours, then came back.
Right.
And you're tying in people from all over the country when need be. So students learning those skills, there's a lot of value in that because, in a sense, the classroom environment as we knew it in February of 2020 is very different than a workplace environment in some respects. So before the coronavirus, what percentage of CPS students were taking classes online about?
It continues to grow. I want to say that's now at about 75%.
Okay.
So, and I don't think that's going to continue. I think that'll continue to grow.
Yeah.
I think there'll always be some demand, particularly based on the topic, for in-person experiences. But we are looking at doing some innovative new things in terms of for programs that probably historically have been in-person only. We're really developing some programs that we can offer online that are going to be a little more unusual for the time being.
So are those engineering programs?
They are, yeah. So we've introduced a couple of new engineering technology programs. One of them is an associate degree in electrical engineering technology, which really prepares you to work in an advanced manufacturing environment, setting up, advanced machines, running them, doing reports and diagnostics, and being the point person for all of that, and a variety of other things too. But I think one of the things that we're able to do with that is, teach the classes online, provide you with an engineering kit to do some of your lab work, but we're also going to be hosting immersion weekends and immersion events on campus so that you can come work on equipment in our main labs, hear from industry professionals. We'll bring in, people from industry from around Indiana to teach courses, and also really also make career connections for people. So I think you're going to start to see some more of that kind of blended experience where you can take your coursework online and also have opportunities to interact in person and utilize things like that. So I think that's going to be part of the future, not just for engineering programs, but for others that we're developing too. So
it sounds like it's really about just leveraging what's best about virtual learning, what's best about classroom learning, and making it sort of the right fit for the students so that when convenience is important, that's available, but when they need that relationship building, when they need that hands-on help, you can do that.
Yeah, and it expands your reach, and it expands the number of students who can take advantage of the opportunity. You don't need to live in proximity to a campus that offers this in order to get your education. And by expanding the types of programs you can access that way, I think we'll be doing some innovative things along those lines. So, but beyond that, I think what we're seeing in terms of challenges and things that are interesting and things that are taking up a lot of mind space for us and for me as someone who's working to communicate the opportunities to students at Indiana Tech. It's much more about the changing demographics of students, the changing nature of careers, and where we're headed as far as opportunities, both not just here in the region but throughout the country. So on one hand, when you look at demographics here in the Midwest, we're going to see a decline in the number of high school students graduating high school. So that makes it much more competitive to attract students.
And that's not graduation rate, that's just pure population.
Pure numbers. Pure numbers.
Yeah.
So there's just going to be fewer high school grads. And we're not the only region in the country that's like that. Midwest in particular is like that, but there are many others that are going to be that way. And that's going to be over the next 4 or 5 years where that's going to take place. And, so that poses challenges. So it also makes it, you've got to make sure that your programs are top notch and that you can attract students who are motivated and come in the numbers that can provide a good educational experience to everybody. And I think more broadly, I think what you're seeing is a little bit of what we talked about earlier in terms of you need to keep learning throughout your career because you're not likely these days to stay at a place for 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. And you might not even be that likely to have the same career for 30 or 40 years. So, having that opportunity and those resources to keep learning in the moment and as you need it is important. And I think higher ed has some miles to go to be
it's not an
really
industry that's known as
that,
being real agile, at least
Correct.
Not to date. So,
yes. Yeah. So I think our intent and our continued aspiration is to be that. And so you're starting to see us develop new educational offerings that address that. So we've been creating more certificate level programs. And, but those also still bear college credit. So you can earn a certificate, say, in accounting, project management, marketing management, those kind of things. But you also get college credits for those 5-6 courses you take to earn your certificate. So that if you do want to go on and get a degree in that, you've at least jumped forward to that. But still on its own, it's this very compelling credential that might serve your company better or might help you brush up on a skill to start your own firm, or maybe you already have done that, but you just want to make sure that you've got a better grounding in an area that you don't currently have expertise in. We see a lot of interest in that from companies looking to educate their staff too. Mm-hmm. So some of them are very proactive and generous with employees for educational benefits, and that could be everything from training future managers by helping them get perhaps an MBA or something like that, or even just the next generation of first-level supervisors who just need to learn project management skills and become better at that to really start to move up in their organization. It's also a talent retention initiative for companies, so it really works both ways. It's beneficial to the employee. They brush up on their skills. They become more marketable. At the same time, the company can really keep good people by investing in them and preparing them for what they need. So you're going to see more of that, I think, at higher ed too, that close partnership with industry. Not that hasn't been there in various forms over the years, but I think that real intentionality about what kinds of programs do we offer and when is going to become more apparent as we really look to, you're an example. So you got your master's at Indiana Tech. We have graduate level, certificate programs now too. So there are opportunities for you to keep stacking credentials and adding on to that, or if you want to go on and get a PhD. And so we want to really be there throughout that journey and not just treat you as an alum who comes to homecoming and supports our annual fund, although we do want you to do that. It's much more about how can we be your educational partner throughout your life, not just your degree grantor after 4 years.
Yeah, well, and it's tied to the whole national conversation about ROI of higher education.
Sure.
People are asking questions about what's the value, is this a good investment? So it's good that Indiana Tech's adapting to that and saying, let's provide people with different ways they can get value out of an education through us. For some people, that's still going to be a traditional degree path, but for others, they might want certification that is faster to attain, that is right for them at this point in their career, knowing that they can build off that moving forward.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I think our faculty are doing a really good job of staying in close touch with industry and looking not just to today but to the future as they continue to refine programs, develop new ones, and so that'll be the exciting part of what I do is introducing those new essentially products to the marketplace and helping serve students that way.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other exciting projects you're working on? Anything comes to mind?
One of the things I most enjoy is something we're kind of always doing, but we have set certain goals for ourselves for this year, is really collecting success stories from current students and from alums. It's just really, it's enjoyable, but it's also very compelling to hear the stories of people who have taken their Indiana Tech degree or their certificate or their experience at Tech and gone on and done some really amazing things. I mean, you hear all kinds of stories about what our alums have done that just really blow you away. For a time during my tenure at Indiana Tech, I also worked with institutional advancement, which includes alumni relations. So I got to know a lot of our alums, and I mean, we've got people who worked on the Apollo program, up to today. We've got people still working at NASA. We've got them working at Apple. We've got them working at great local firms here, BAE Systems, Sweetwater, MedPro, all the great firms around here that you can name. And they're becoming the leaders of those firms for tomorrow, but they're also starting their own businesses. And so it's just a lot of fun to hear them talk about that. And they honor us by allowing us to share those stories with potential students. And so that's really no surprise. It's how you tell the most effective story in any industry. But for higher ed, it's sort of, that can be a complex story to tell. We're not just a product. We're not just an outcome. We're an experience too. We're both those things, and we need to have a return on investment, but you need to also understand it's a journey for people during which you want to help them grow. And so hearing our alums and our students talk about how Indiana Tech and our faculty and our staff have helped them do that, probably the favorite part of my job. And so that's something that we always are looking to collect those next group of things. And we'll highlight those in everything from things on campus to events that we do to our advertising. Currently, we feature a number of our alums in our ads, social media, but also just trying to get them, if they graduated, connected to our current students, because then hopefully they can just extend the hand and help that next generation back up too.
Yeah. So William and Mary can keep Patton Oswalt and Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
And I think that's the first time that Patton Oswalt and Thomas Jefferson have been paired together.
I think that's true. Yeah. And John Stewart's an alum too.
Okay.
So,
all right.
But I think
Thomas Jefferson is rolling in his grave.
Right, exactly. Well, I think they'll keep the three of them. They might not keep me. They're happy. Go work at Indiana Tech.
I didn't mention. There's a reason I didn't mention you.
Exactly.
No, but I mean that's really. I mean, I'll say that. Higher ed was transformative to me and changed my life.
Yep.
And the experience at Indiana Tech has really been, since I started there, the relationship has continued because of the people. It really comes down to the people and their experiences. So I think it's great that you're leveraging that and telling those stories.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been getting lost in the national conversation about higher ed, I definitely understand and support the idea that there should be a really good return on your investment. There's certainly many institutions that are not inexpensive to attend, but there's also lots of ways and lots of help out there to make sure that college remains affordable, and not just at Tech, but everywhere. But I think it's interesting. I'm starting to see a little bit of a dichotomy between sort of the national conversation about how it's all about getting a career, getting a job, getting the skills to get that job, and going on and getting that return on investment. And certainly it's about that. But it's interesting to hear HR directors and business leaders also talk a little more in depth about what they're looking for. More and more you're hearing that we want our students to be prepared to work as a team, to communicate well, to be able to relate to others, to be able to see the big picture, to be able to collaborate and do all those things, which when you think about those, we think of those as soft skills as though they're a little bit less relevant or needed. But these are often the first things people mention to us when we ask, well, what are you looking for as we look to maybe partner with a firm? And they say, we're really looking for people who can do those things. And we could teach them skills, right? And that's not to say that they can teach them to be an engineer or an accountant or those things. That's not what I mean. It's, but they really are looking for that whole person, right? Who's going to be a good team member and can be a future leader. And I don't think you get that just by focusing on, okay, a laundry list of here's the skills we've delivered to you. You need also that qualitative experience. And I think the pendulum has swung a little bit away from that as something we value as a nation in higher ed. And so I think that's why I'm really happy that helping prepare students to lead lives of significance and worth is one of the main tenets of our mission statement, because we definitely, want to see students not just, again, leave with a set of skills and a degree to do this, but the ability to make choices throughout their lives, to be able to have influence over others, to be able to lead and collaborate and set their path. And the only way you really do that is, by developing the whole person. So anyway, so I'll get off my soapbox on that one. But
well, no,
I want to see that conversation get a little bit richer about those things, and it's not easy all the time. There are a large range of parents who get that because that's the kind of experience they had. But sometimes when you see some of the national commentary about higher ed and things they find outrageous, take the worst example, post it out there, and
it's a harder thing to measure, right?
Yeah.
It's a super important thing that's hard to measure. I always tell people that I was an English major,
right?
And I am glad I was an English major, and I have respect for English majors, but being an English major doesn't prepare you for much in the way of a career, but at the same time, it prepares you for almost everything.
Right.
Because what I always say is what I got out of college is it taught me how to learn. And that's what I do every day. So, and I don't know that there's another experience I would have had that could have replaced that, regardless of where I went to school.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's again, I think that's why I like Indiana Tech so much. I think we provide both, right? I think you're going to get on a very specific career path. We've got degrees aligned with that, but we're going to make sure we build up the whole person along the way too. So I think that's an unbeatable combo.
Yeah. All right. So because this is the first time we're doing this and we can do anything we want.
Excellent. What are we doing next?
We're going to close with 3 quick hit questions that are kind of a reflection of the questions I asked.
Yep.
I'm going to stall here so you can think about your answers since I so woefully prepared you for these questions.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about.
Can I contradict myself?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. It's going to be entertaining.
Okay.
If anyone is still listening at this point in the conversation, go back and find where Brian contradicted himself,
Exactly.
and you'll win a prize.
Good point.
Yeah.
So when you and I go back and listen to this, we'll find this entertaining.
Correct. So the 3 questions I'm going to ask are, number one piece of advice for maybe a younger, emerging marketing professional. What's the one thing you've learned that was super helpful to you in your career? The second question is, if you wanted people to know one thing about Indiana Tech in a soundbite, what would it be? And the third thing is, for people working in marketing today, whether they're new or more seasoned, what's the one thing you think is most important for people to focus on in this moment? In other words, if you could I want you to give advice to someone new in their career about career path, but also advice to a fellow marketing professional about the environment we're in and how you're navigating that. So let's start with the first question. If you were talking to a college student who was studying marketing or someone who's just getting started in marketing, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them about a career path?
I think the best piece of advice I could give somebody just starting out would be to focus on what you can learn, not what you can earn to start. It's not that you don't need to put food on the table or earn a good living, but put yourself in a place where they're going to invest in you to get your knowledge and your experience to where you need it to be to really then continue to go on and do great things. So even things that might seem like grunt work or those kind of things, just find yourself a place that's going to invest in the people that they have, and you'll be able to tell that pretty well from experience in terms of if you interview somewhere or if you're being proactive in doing an internship with a firm, if you have a mentor somewhere, you'll be able to tell the seriousness with which they take that. So don't pass up an opportunity to learn something new. In the short version of that.
All right, great. So if you could tell people just one thing about Indiana Tech, what's the one thing you want them to know?
One thing about Indiana Tech, what would I tell people? There's so much that I normally tell people about it, so I'm trying to think of what would be the one thing. I think for me, I think it's really our why. Really everybody at Indiana Tech believes to their core that everyone deserves the opportunity to reach their highest potential, and that the most surefire and reliable way to do that is through education. Now, that's not always a degree program. Oftentimes it is, but it's not always. It's just a belief that we all have that for any of us to really fulfill who we can be, education is the path for that. And I would encourage that no matter where you get your education. But so I think it's definitely a place that believes that, and I think that's reflected in how you see us talk about ourselves. With thinking of our main tagline right now is "Go for it," and just that's what we believe. just jump in and go for it, and you deserve it. You have, you deserve to be, have the opportunities that education can provide, and there are people to help you.
Yeah. All right. So the last one, there's a lot of challenges in the marketing environment today. The economy is not great.
Yep.
There's a lot of anxiety out there. Marketers are finding it's really hard to predict the future. So you as a wise old marketing sage.
Well, old anyway.
Well, yeah. What would be a piece of advice you would give to a peer about how to navigate 2020 in the future?
Part of my advice would be, don't put too much pressure on yourself to predict the future. I think historically we've always had a limited ability to do that anyway. And, I think we, as we've talked about even at Indiana Tech, the situation changes every couple of weeks, right? In terms of what kind of impact it could have about, whether we have in-person classes or not, things get more or less severe. So I would say give yourself a break in terms of trying to make sure that you can prepare for every last thing that could happen. You have to be responsible in terms of protecting your operation and your people. More from a communication and marketing standpoint, I think it just reiterates the importance to understand and meet people where they are, whatever message you're communicating. Early on in the pandemic when we had gone online and we were wondering, what is this? How is this going to impact potential students wanting to come to us? We really tried to sit down and plot out, okay, where is people's mindset out right now? They're probably uncertain about their finances, right? If businesses are closing down temporarily or more permanently, can I afford an education? There's also going to be the mindset of, I went online, I didn't want to, I'm raring to go to get back. There's going to be people more concerned about wanting to get to their education, but wanting to maybe not do it in person. So you really kind of had to sit down and think about, how does this affect how we talk about the opportunities here? And so I think you need to be cognizant of that as far as, people are going to, they've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And, if you can be helpful in what you provide, come at them with that in mind, rather than just always from a super promotional mindset.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a group of customer service professionals earlier today, and somebody said, what's the one thing? And I said, I think it's empathy right now.
Yeah,
from a customer service standpoint, whether it's serving students, you just don't know what the other person is going through. So we should always do that, but 2020 is kind of a nice reminder from the universe that we probably need to do more of that.
We absolutely do, and you're right. It's something we should always do. It's you always have to keep in mind, like, you have no idea what the person across from you has been through, or when you're helping them with a problem, or if they're reluctant to take a next step that you'd like to see them take, or whatever. And it's we talk about it at Indiana Tech, is just making sure we're always giving each other grace, and we do that internally, just in terms of helping one another. But you definitely have to do it with people that you're dealing with on a business standpoint, for sure.
Yeah. Well, speaking of having empathy for the person across the table, I'm going to have empathy for you and end the conversation here. But really, this was great. Thank you so much. I knew it would be great because you've got a great story to tell, and we could keep talking for hours. But I appreciate you spending some time sharing a little bit about your background, Indiana Tech, and the stuff you're working on. So very much appreciated, my friend. Thank you for being our first guest. And this went so well, we'll probably do another one.
Okay. Hopefully, I didn't ruin the concept. And thanks for having me.
All right, thanks again, and thanks everybody for listening. We will check in with you next time. If you have any recommendations for a guest or a topic, please let us know. And from everyone at Asher Agency, thank you very much for listening.